Hello, my friends. How are you? Good to see you. Ed, I see you're already here. Excellent. A couple other people are on. Terrific. Good to see you. Hope everybody is doing well tonight. Just kind of free form tonight's show. I got a couple things I want to talk about, but I'm also open to anything you guys want to ask about. Um, had a couple interesting things happening. Having to do with a show I just finished that wasn't normally on my radar. I also want to talk about the Paramount Warner Brothers situation and a funny little side effect that could happen. And yeah, a lot of strange stuff going on in the world. I mean, we know what's going on in the Middle East and Washington, and I just, yeah. So we're going to focus on this stuff today. How's that? Yeah, let's have a little fun. So, where should we begin? Well, let's start with the Warner Brothers thing. Because as a lot of you, there's a lot of people out there that are nervous because Paramount is now the leading bidder for Warner Brothers. And, there's some baggage with that. Warner Brothers or Paramount is known to be a little more right leaning. Um, they're actively changing the CBS evening news to be a little bit more right wing. And if you're for that, then you should be happy. If you're against that, then probably not. But I don't want to get into the politics here. But the thing I want to talk about is going to make me tell a football story first. You guys know I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. I wear the Panther hat occasionally. Not tonight. This is the Mandalorian. But I am a fan of the Carolina Panthers, and they went to the playoffs this season. But there's something funny that happened. A couple weeks beforehand, somebody noticed that, I mean, it was set up that basically if the Buccaneers won out, they would go to the playoffs. If the Panthers won X number of games, they would go to the playoffs. So it was really just down to those two teams. But there was a third team involved called the Atlanta Falcons. And the problem with this is that the Falcons didn't have a chance to win, but they had a chance to play spoiler. And what would happen is, if at the end of the season the Bucks and the Panthers were tied, the Buccaneers had the tiebreaker. But if the Atlanta Falcons won their last two games and the Panthers and the Bucks were tied, so all three teams were tied, then the Panthers would actually go because of common opponents. It was a really weird scenario. And it was one of those like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. The odds that the Panthers are going to lose the last couple games, end up in a tie with the Bucks, but the Falcons, who have done horribly all year, are going to win their last two games and make it a three-way tie. I mean, the odds of that were so slim. Well, guess what? That is exactly what happened. Every single bit of that was exactly what happened. So, yeah, Carolina Panthers made the playoffs after losing their last two games because the Falcons won their game. Now, I tell you that story because there's an interesting scenario here. When you get into one of these buyouts, they talk about when they get to these buyouts, there's these clauses they put in that says, well, we're going to do this dance. We're going to try to sell to you and you're going to try to sell to us. But if something happens and the deal doesn't go through, you owe us money. You owe us a kill fee. Now, Netflix and Warner Brothers had that. And as part of Paramount's deal, they agreed to pay the kill fee to Netflix of $2.8 billion. So Paramount, which hasn't bought anything yet, paid $2.8 billion to Netflix. So Netflix is at home going, let me get this straight. We can walk away from this deal right now and pocket almost $3 billion. Yeah, we're good. So now the Paramount Warner Brothers deal is moving forward, and they have to be careful because there's a lot of states and their attorney generals who don't want this deal to happen. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff they're going to have to, hoops they're going to have to jump through. And one second. So there's a lot of regulatory stuff they got to jump through. Yeah, $3 billion, nice. But yeah, that's the thing is that, for the deal works out great for them. Oh, hang on. I am sorry about this. I tried to. Okay, getting confused. Let me put that away. All right. So that's the deal. Well, Warner Brothers and Paramount have a deal now. And if it doesn't go through, and if one of these regulatory things ends up stopping it, Paramount has to pay Warner Brothers $7 billion. So it is conceivable that Netflix and Warner Brothers break their deal. Paramount swoops in, pays $2.8 billion to Netflix to move this forward. And then if it fails and doesn't go through, they then have to pay $7 billion to Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers and Netflix could make almost $10 billion off of Paramount, and Paramount could end up with nothing, and then Netflix and Warner Brothers could go back and make their deal. So, yeah, I said the Panthers thing because it's a long shot, but the Panther thing happened. So, as Jim Carrey, I think it was Jim Carrey, or was it Jeff Daniels' character? So there's a chance. And I don't know why, but I want to see that. I want to see just something about the idea of a company losing $10 billion because they wouldn't take no for an answer. That just. Now, I don't know what will happen if the Paramount Warner Brothers deal could go through. Yeah, it could be. And, well, the thing is with Paramount got bought out by Skydance, and Skydance is backed by Ellis's father, Larry Ellis, and is the backer, and it's Oracle. And Oracle has a lot of money. So I don't think that it would destroy them, but it would definitely be a slap in the face, and I think Larry would, not jump on his kid's next project that quickly, It's like, why don't you just have a lemonade stand? It'd be much easier, I'll buy you some lemons. Yeah, but Paramount has come out and said that they would leave James Gunn and Peter Safran in charge of DC, and Pam Abdi and Peter DeLuca would still be in charge of Warner Brothers, and yeah, but you got to think that they're going to have certain mandates, which who knows? Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But yeah, it's all pretty up in the air right now. So, but yeah, the $10 billion or $9.8 billion that is being possibly shuffled around here, I just find that would be hilarious. So, all right, let's move on to a second topic. And Ed, I may have told this story before, but it popped back in my head. So if you've already heard this, Ed, I'm sorry. The rest of you probably haven't heard it unless you watched my show on The Experience. I was talking, or Matt Hawkins was posting. He's been reading a lot lately, and he posted that he was rereading the Michael Moorcock's Elric books. And that reminded me of a very funny incident at a convention. I appreciate that, Ed. So I am at the Silicon Valley Con up in San Jose, that area, and I had been doing a few more novels than I had done comics at that, right at that point. I'd been doing the more recent stuff were the novels, so they put me in the author area instead of the comic area, which was neat because I was working for a different crowd at that point, and it made it easier because I had people coming over looking for novels. So it was a nice thing. Um, anyway, I was set up with there was the end cap or the row. There was another author here, and I can't remember his name, but it's where I found the guy that I had to do some audiobooks for me. And then I sat there. But on the other side behind us, before the curtain they have hanging, on the other side of the curtain was Michael Moorcock. And as you probably guessed, very, very popular. Well, God, I got to do this again. 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay. So Michael Moorcock sitting behind us, and he has a very large crowd. Well, his line goes from his table, which was at the back of mine, down to the end, around the corner, and then back up. So the end of his line was actually in front of my table. Now, normally you would think, oh, hey, what do you do? It's blocking people. But if you're clever, you're not. You're not upset because these people are here to buy novels from Michael Moorcock and get signs, things signed. And they're there for a minute or two, so you can pitch them your work. You can start talking about, hey, Lucius Fogg, he's a 1950s noir detective series set in a world with the supernatural. You just start doing the pitch. And I was making sales for the people in his line. It was awesome, where other people probably wouldn't, it's hard to get people to stop sometimes. I had the guy to my right was used to be one of the putties on the Power Rangers, and he's doing books now too. He's always at cons. But so it was an interesting little area, and I've got this line of people lined up from wanting to get their signatures from Michael Moorcock, and I'm sitting at my table, and this very attractive young lady comes up, stands in front of my table, looks at me and says, "Is this the line for Moorcock?" That's what I did. I did the, and everybody around kind of realized what she had said, and they're like, it started laughing. And I'm like, it is, yeah. I had too many answers in my brain, too many things like, well, I can try, but I mean, just it was overload. But it was just such the moment that I almost became like, was it Combi going? Yeah. Oh, she ended up buying a book. She did buy a fog book. So that all worked out. But yeah. Is this the line for Moorcock? And now whenever I hear somebody talk about Elric or Michael Moorcock, that's what comes to mind. All right. Let's go ahead and shift. And again, like I said, tonight we're just kind of free forming it. So if there's any questions you got, anything, um, I'll be happy to answer it. I don't have anything new on Reacher yet for you, Ed, the spinoff. I do think that's probably going to come up pretty quick. I think we'll get the Neely spinoff, but the Alex Cross series is out right now, so we'll have to see how that does and then go from there. But all right, so there is a show I did try that it's on Peacock, so maybe 1 out of every 37 people has a chance to watch it. And it's stars Simu Liu from Shang-Chi, the guy that played Shang-Chi. So that's why I wanted to give it a shot anyway. He was on hyping it on Twitter and stuff, but it came out in December, and we put it on the list of things for us to watch, Lisa and I. And it just kind of sat, and we were doing this thing. We're watching the trailers. Oh, we're watching The Pit. We're watching this. We're watching that. It just, there was always something. But we finally got around to watching the first episode, and I thought, I like the premise. And the premise of it is that a government agency has figured out how to use nanites to hack into somebody's head so that they can then see through their eyes and listen through their ears. So basically turning them into a walking camera, And they did this with an agent who works for an overseen department called the orphanage. Basically, they're the ones that watch the FBI and the CIA and stuff like that to make sure nothing's going, south. So they're like a clandestine agency over the clandestine agencies. And I thought that was a pretty good premise. I liked that. So I watched the first one, and then probably a few days later, we got around to watching the second one, and then a couple more days, and third, and finally we got to the fourth one earlier this week. And then last night, I always ask Lisa what she wants to watch, and then I read off the list of what it is, and then we pick, but I usually let her pick first, and then we agree on whatever. And this one just wasn't, getting into the cycle a lot. So last night, I'm like, I would love to finish the Copenhagen Test because we've got Alex Cross, we've got young Sherlock Holmes coming up. We have so many different series coming up. It'd be nice to finish one and get it off the list. So she said, all right, let's watch a Copenhagen. So, and if you're curious what the Copenhagen Test is, I can tell you this without being too much of a spoiler. It's a Sophie's Choice type test. You're coming back from a mission and a child runs out and wants help, and you're told to evacuate people with the Americans being the priority. And this kid is a native of whatever country you're in. And you only have one more space on the chopper. And he picks him up and starts taking him to the chopper. And then a girl comes running out who's an American and begs to be on the flight. And he has to choose between, do you take the American girl and follow the orders, or do you take the child? And the American girl it's a young woman. I mean, it's 20 some odd year old woman who could better fend for herself for waiting for the next helicopter type of thing. And that's the Copenhagen test. It's to test your loyalty. Though it is pointed out at some point that there is a third option. It's not a binary one or the other, because you could go, well, I'm going to put the woman in and the kid, and I'm going to wait. I'll be the one that stays. And that's not one that anybody ever expects to have picked. So anyway, so we ended up watching the other 4 episodes last night. And it's kind of mixed for me. There is some really great stuff in this series. Concepts, ideas, acting, some really, really good stuff, some good writing. But there were also these moments, these clunkers, where something happened and you go, what? No. Why on earth would, no? For example, he's trying to tail a car. He shoots out the back taillight and is running after it and is able to follow the car. Even though he's on foot, he's able to follow where the car goes because of pieces of the taillight that are falling as it goes, like a breadcrumb trail. And all I could think of at that point is, well, that wouldn't work. I mean, okay, it might work in extreme circumstances, but you couldn't count on it. Nobody would shoot the damn thing thinking that would help. Now, I could see him accidentally shooting it, but no, he lined up, took the perfect aim, and boom. So there's those moments. Or where things just, people act so against what anybody would normally do that it's this clunker. And all I could think of is that they had to have a writer's room that had probably like 3 or 4 really good writers. And then one guy who's probably the nephew of the studio owner or something like that. And, he's supposed to get at least one thing every episode that he puts in. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because you would have these really good twists and turns. Things that, I'm kind of predicting some of them, but I'm predicting them because I would do it. Because it's a great twist here, a great twist there. There's some really good stuff, but then there's this moment you're like, well, that doesn't make sense at all. Why on earth? No. So, it's, if you get a chance to watch this, I do recommend it because let me start by saying it feels like an NBC series. It's on Peacock. It has that visual look to it. It doesn't look like, a high production series or anything. It's It's an NBC TV show. But it's got a good cast. Brian D'Arcy's in it, Sal Robinick, a few other people that you'd recognize, along with Simu Liu. And he's great in it. There's a girl that is supposed to be his girlfriend, but she's an agent trying to keep close to him, and he knows it. So it's like it's a real interesting story, and the things the agency will do and risk to try to track down, how this hack is done. There's a little bit of like the Enigma thing where they figured out how to break Enigma, but they couldn't stop something from happening, or it would tell the Germans that they broke Enigma and ruined it. So there's a lot of that in there, and it's strong from that point of view. And then it's like, DTD. It's like, why the DTD? We didn't need the DTD. We had all this other. One person sitting in the viewing room who didn't work on the show at the end could have sat there, watched the 8 episodes, and went, really good, DTD, really good. Fix that. Next episode, really good, DTD, really good. So if you get a chance to watch the Copenhagen, and it's set up for a sequel series. It is absolutely set up for a sequel series. But if you can overlook the DTDs, it's a good series. The problem is that the DTDs are really pronounced. So you almost like you want to pause the video and go, did that? Yeah, it did. Really? Yeah. Why? I don't know. You like start having discussion groups to try to figure out why this would have happened. So, but the rest of it is great. It's a really neat setup. There are twists and turns and things that and if you watch it, I think I want Parker's job because I think I'd be good at it. But that's only if you watch the show, you'll know what I'm talking about. All right, let's see. Ed has a question. Ed says, did you watch Stranger Things? Amy and I started watching it together at season 1 a couple of weeks ago, and we just watched series finale. Got a few questions, but don't know if you watched it. I tried. I watched a couple of the first episodes when it came out, and did not like it. And I didn't like it for a very simple reason. Because there's so much 80s forced into the show that it's not real. Having lived in the 80s, being about the age that these kids are supposed to be, it was like they took every cliche thing from the 80s and tried to jam it all into the show. And it just got to the point where I'm watching them play Dungeons and Dragons in a basement covered in paneling and shag carpet. And I'm like, oh my God. Stop hitting me in the face with the fact that it's 1980 something. I don't need this. I don't need that much, They could have just sprinkled it in. And to me, shows should be, unless there's something like specific to a date, like the DB Cooper thing. If you're doing a movie about DB Cooper, then it should be set at the time that DB Cooper took place. Or if you're doing a period piece. But if you're doing something that's supposed to be, let it breathe a little. You can say it's 1980s. You could put a few 1980 cars in there. You make sure you don't throw anything that's actually, didn't get invented till later. But you don't have to go way over the top. And it did to me. And it did so much that I could not get into the show. So it says, I'll tell you this. I started watching it and wanted to stop after a few episodes, but Amy loved it. The first 3 seasons are boring and really overplayed the 80s. However, season 4 and 5 were amazing. So there you go. See, they overplayed the 80s so much. And I think it's a show meant for people who weren't teenagers in the 80s, who didn't, weren't born in like the early 70s and everything these kids are going through. It wasn't all like Elliot on his bicycle. It wasn't like that. It wasn't all parachute pants and neon colors. And I mean, that stuff existed, but it wasn't omnipresent. And this show seemed to make it seem like it. So that's why I bailed out on it after a few episodes. You know, it says, I agree with your take, but the 80s stuff calmed down a lot as the show progressed. I mean, I know about the show, I know about the characters and stuff. It's impossible to do what I do without knowing about these things. There's lots of shows that I know a lot about that I've never watched. So that's kind of an interesting thing. But what are your questions? I don't know if I can answer them or not, but I can give it a shot from the things I've heard and what I do know about the series. I know that there's going to be a animated spinoff. I know there's no 9th episode that people are waiting for. So, oh my God, that was all the people that they're going to do a secret 9th episode. No one's doing a secret 9th episode. No one's doing that. It's not a thing. If you don't like the ending, I get it, but there's not well, we're in the upside down. Everything is wrong. This is that is this. I mean, they talked to the Duffer Brothers and they went, wow, that would be a really cool idea. We didn't, but it'd be a cool idea. So, but yeah. I might give it another shot, but I got to tell you, this is my list right now. This is my to-watch list. Still got to watch Sandman season 2. I'm hesitating because I know that it's done. I started watching Death by Lightning on Netflix. I want to get back to that, but I haven't, and that's all about the assassination of a president, and should be really good. I'm supposed to watch the recent reboot of Mortal Kombat, so when the movie comes out, Lisa and I can watch it. There's a Witcher Tale on Netflix. Haven't watched the latest season of The Witcher. Not sure how I'm going to, but I'll give it a shot. I've got Alex Cross is back. I need to watch that. We're in the middle of The Pit. Fantastic show. Every week we look forward to The Pit. I'm trying to watch The Night Manager. I didn't watch the first season when it came out. Now it was season 2. But I'm watching that one on my own. Lisa tapped out on that one. A little too British Spy. Starfleet Academy we're watching. We've got scheduled to watch The Rip on Netflix. The Night Agent season 3 is back. We've watched the first 2 seasons. I want to watch the Springsteen movie on Disney. Paradise is back. We watched the first season of that. Lisa wants to watch Bridgerton, the new season. There's that movie War Machine coming out on March 6th with Alan Ritchson. Basically, it's like Predator type movie. Young Sherlock Holmes on March 4th. Good Omens 3, which I think is just a 90-minute movie, on May 13th. There's The Bluff with Carl Urban, that pirate movie that just dropped on Prime. Tomb Raider season 2, the animated thing I need to get to. We got Daredevil season 2, Daredevil Born Again season 2. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot. So I may not get to Stranger Things that quickly, but I'll try. So, plus, I'm thinking of reading the Elric books and more Dungeon Crawler Carl. I got a lot of stuff. So, all right. My question is, what do you think about that as a writer? I wanted your opinion on the technique. I think the show was incredibly well written from everything I've seen, the plot lines I've heard. I think it had enough to keep people in. And the fact that the show went on that long, and even in the final season, it still had everybody just enamored with it. And this brings up something I've been thinking about, and we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think it's a really well-written show, and I think the Duffer Brothers are worth keeping an eye on. So, the trailer for Mortal Kombat 2 looks amazing. I'm pumped about that one, and the new He-Man movie coming out. A lot of potential. Yeah, I agree. There's some great stuff coming out. This is a thought I had the other day, and I'm still working out the details of it, but it kind of goes with the Stranger Things. There is a point as an author or writer, whether you're working on novels, comics, TV shows, that you lose your creation. You lose the ability to control where it goes. I'm not saying that you don't do it. You still control it. But there's a point where the fan base take over. I was thinking of calling this the Reichenbach situation. No, the Reichenbach effect. Yes, go with the Reichenbach effect. And that is that you write a character becomes so popular that it gets to a point where you do something with it and the fans rebel. And in doing so, you almost have to change what you're doing as a creator because of it. Reichenbach falls. Every Sherlock Holmes fan knows it. That is where Sherlock and Moriarty finally had their confrontation, and they both died. The problem is the fans of Sherlock Holmes did not accept it. They did not accept the death. And they hounded Arthur Conan Doyle so much that he brought the character back, and he went back to writing it. He was done writing it. He was tired of writing Sherlock Holmes. But the reaction was so visceral and so over the top that he started writing it again and undid the ending he wanted because of that. And I think we see that in a lot of pop culture. We see that where shows are beloved for a long time and hated when they end because people have their idea of how it should end. Game of Thrones. People loved that series, hated the ending. And it's not even like the book series is done. So this is the phenomenon of the TV show because, it became so popular. Lost. Sopranos. After so many years of The Sopranos being on the air, the fact that they did this quiet, subdued ending did not sit right with the fans. Now, they're not coming back and changing it. They're not pulling a Conan Doyle and coming back. But you notice that they do stuff like, oh, we'll do a prequel series and try to get fans, Game of Thrones. We're going to do the House of the Dragon. We're going to do Knights of Seven Realms. It's there kind of to fix it, and we see that with superheroes too. How many times we see a character, people are pissed because a character is taking one direction or the other because they've been reading the character so long and following and investing in the character that they feel a sense of ownership. But it's only over a certain amount of time that happens. It's not automatic, Nobody comes out of a movie of a brand new IP and goes, that's not how it should have ended. Okay, every once in a while it happens. But overall, it's no one came out of the Untouchables going, I can't believe you killed Malone. You should have let him live. That was horrible. We need a Malone spinoff. We need to find out he's still alive, that Sean Connery is still out there doing things the Chicago way. That's what we need. Hey, Mr. Nope. So, yeah, that's kind of this idea I've been having lately, that there gets to a point when you create a character that it becomes so popular that you lose the ability to control where it goes. You can still write it that way, but your fans might revolt. And that is fascinating to me. I mean, it really is that your character has become bigger than yourself, and then how do you end it? You're not going to be able to please everybody. You may not please anybody, Dresden Files. How's he going to end the Dresden Files? He says it's going to end. It's only 25 books they're supposed to be. And then he's got a spinoff series already planned. But that just seems so difficult. Yeah, you're right. It is very similar to Misery, where people get so invested in a character or a storyline that when it doesn't end how they want it to, they get upset. And we see that now with the Marvel Universe. I mean, if you sit down and go through the Marvel Universe, the movies, and look at them as individual movies and stuff, I don't really think any of them deserve the vitriol that they've gotten. Thor: Love and Thunder, Secret Invasion may be the exceptions. But all of the other ones, they had some good stuff. Some of them are bad, not great movies, but they're not bad. But there's this thing where a fan comes out and says, you didn't do it the way I wanted you to. And you see it now, especially with different generations becoming attached to characters like Green Lantern. There are people upset that Hal Jordan is older in the upcoming Lantern series because that's their Hal Jordan. They want that's their Green Lantern. They want Hal Jordan. But other people are like, no, we want John Stewart to be Green Lantern. This is great because, he's got this mentor-mentee role, and then we're going to move on and John Stewart's going to be the guy. Then there's other people going, what about Kyle? Where's Kyle Rayner? Kyle was awesome. Kyle's my Green Lantern. Do you have Barry Allen be the Flash or Wally West or Bart Allen? It all depends on what you grew up with. I grew up in the 70s, so when they start doing these movies, I want to go through these characters in kind of the order because it's how I learned the story. I want Spider-Man to fight Doc Ock and the Vulture and those characters long before he gets to Venom and Carnage. because they're much later. You know, Mr. Negative, I think his name is coming up in something. I don't know who that is. I don't care about Mr. Negative. You know, I want a good Rhino. And I think that's because we put so much investment into it, we become attached. And hey, Thomas, good to see you. By the way, did I say hi to Mr. Nope? If not, hello. But so yeah, that's my thought on that. I've been thinking about that lately. Is how your characters can actually be, I don't want to say taken away from you, because you still control the story. HBO still wrote the ending for Game of Thrones, and that's the ending they wanted to do. But the fans aren't happy with it, you know? Yeah, or like, oh, we need another episode to really properly finish off Stranger Things. Well, no, that's how the Duffer Brothers wanted to end it. So I'm fascinated by that. Another thing that came up this week, and I was a little surprised by. Do you guys know the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast? I think it's Josh Horowitz does it. He had Zack Snyder on because it's like the 10th anniversary of Batman v Superman. And he was talking about decisions they made, the whole Martha thing. And as I listened to him, I should probably say I'm the guy that when the DVD comes out, the Blu-ray comes out, I buy it and I watch all the back matter. I watch all the interviews. I listen to the director's commentary because I want that. And there's a lot of movies that people aren't as thrilled with that I really like. And part of it is because I've listened to these people talk about the movie they wanted to make, talk about the effort they put in, how much they love the characters. And even though it didn't go the direction I wanted it to or somebody else wanted it to, there was a love for the character. And you can see that they do understand the character, but they just didn't go the direction I wanted to go or they wanted to go. That was not the case with Zack Snyder. I liked Man of Steel. I didn't hate BVS. I thought Justice League, the Snyder cut was better than the regular. Overall, it was like, okay, we're getting these characters, but I think I have a low bar when it comes to these movies because I grew up with Reb Brown as Captain America and Peter Hammond as Spider-Man. You know, I grew up with these really, really bad TV movies and going through all these, so what I consider a good movie, the bar isn't as high because I've seen worse, you know? And if you get a director who absolutely loves what they're doing, the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, if you ever get a chance to see the director's cut of it, it is so much better than what was released. And you listen to, was it Mark Steven Johnson, I think his name is, or something? The guy who directed it, you can tell he absolutely loved Daredevil and got it. And you watch the director's cut, you see it. The problem is the studio came in, made certain cuts, wanted certain things, wanted a Daredevil Elektra sex scene. So where in the director's cut, when the woman screams, Daredevil leaves Elektra in the rain and goes to the rescue as Daredevil would. But in the theatrical cut, he ignores the screams and goes, has a good time. That's not Daredevil. Now, there's this great clip in the behind the scenes stuff on the director's commentary DVD or Blu-ray where they're talking to the producer. And the producer said, I am really happy that Mark gets to tell his version of the story now with this disc. But I still think what we put in theater is the superior story. And I looked at that guy and went, wow, you couldn't be more wrong. That just could not be more wrong. You don't get it. You shouldn't produce these things. So when I see somebody who loves characters and stuff, again, I give more slack. Because I know that it takes a village and there's always fingers in the pie trying to pull different directions. That said, watching Zack Snyder talk about Superman, watching him talk about his Batman, if your knowledge of Batman was based off of one comic, do you understand Batman? Or are you basically regurgitating the interpretation of the character from one writer? Whoever wrote that comic that you've read. That is Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder read The Dark Knight Returns. His vision of Batman is Frank Miller's vision. Frank Miller's post-superhero vision. And that's when you start seeing, okay, well, there's a lot more to Batman. Why is he shooting things? He didn't seem to get Batman, and he didn't seem to get Superman. And the thing that he stressed so much was his idea that Superman was a Christ allegory. And he focused on that. And he brought that stuff in. And you have to remember something very interesting, very important about Superman. He was never meant to be a Christ allegory for two very big reasons. One, well, the two reasons are the fact that their creators are Jewish. Siegel and Schuster were Jewish. And they made a character, and I'm not saying they didn't make it an allegory, but it was a Moses allegory. Being separated from his family, put into space like he's being put down the river, forced to hide. You find those parallels, He's not supposed to be a god among men. He is supposed to be an inspiration. He's supposed to be a symbol of hope. And Snyder didn't see that, didn't get it. And even when I look back at his work, I can see that. I can see that he went in with a specific interpretation of the characters based not on their 70, 80 years of history, but on a specific interpretation, And when you do that, but you're not saying, "Oh, I'm adapting The Dark Knight Rises." Well, if you're adapting The Dark Knight Rises, we're going to expect the character from Dark Knight Rises. But if you're just making a Batman movie, then we expect Batman, and everybody's going to have their own interpretation of the character, but it's very few people are going to be from one source. I mean, when the Michael Keaton Batman came out, a lot of people were stunned because their previous interpretation of Batman was the Adam West one. And that shook people up. But then we got the second, then we got a third version. So by the time that Ben Affleck takes on the cowl, people have multiple interpretations of Batman and can see the through lines, can see what are regular parts of the character and what are specific to that story. Well, it's almost like Snyder never looked at the through lines. He only looked at that one interpretation. And you hear him talk about it. And he talks about, well, you know, I wouldn't want a Batman that never killed. Why not? You couldn't tell a story that way? Do you want to tell James Bond stories but he's anti-violence? He doesn't carry a gun? Do you want to tell a John Wick story, but there's no puppy? You know, I didn't think the puppy was important, so we're just going to do, John Wick is killing everybody because his car got stolen. I don't think that's going to work. But that's what he did, So it says Peter Hammond and his huge metal bracelets. Yep. I always remembered I was Keaton Batman on a date. My date said, "Where's the pow zip?" Yeah. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I think if you're working on these characters, you need more than a specific interpretation. You need a wide variety. That's why when James Gunn talks about Superman, I was worried at first when he kept looking at All-Star Superman, because while I know a lot of people love All-Star Superman, it wasn't a take I necessarily enjoyed. And it wasn't a take that I necessarily felt was a good representation of what Superman was. There are better. So when the movie came out and we got the Superman we got, I was pleasantly surprised and pleased. Absolutely loved it. But, you look at what could have been had he only done All-Star Superman, I don't know if it would have clicked as well. So, and then the other thing that bugged me is at some point, Zack Snyder should have come out and said, look, folks, my time with these characters is done. I'm moving on. You should too. And he should do this specifically because he and James Gunn are friends. But he doesn't do that. Not only does he still kind of hint that there might be something in the works, which there's no signs that is, but he applauds, he basically thanks and encourages those that keep up the whole Snyder Bro thing to keep going. He loves this. He loves the attention, I guess. I don't know. But all I know is that he's no longer doing these movies. He should move on and clear the air and just go, but he's not. He is keeping that door open and keeping that fan base on the edge of their seat. And I got a problem with that. So, all right, guys. Hey, look, we filled an hour. I didn't even know if I had enough stuff. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap that up there. I appreciate every single one of you for stopping by. Please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. I will be back next week with something new. Again, you got some comments, questions you'd like to talk about, send me a message, and we'll see if we can make a show about it. So, guys, have a great evening. Be safe, and we will see you all next time.